Welcome back to Sailing Corribee Mwera and my 2024 adventures on the west coast of Scotland. In this episode I go from the Sound of Harris out to St Kilda, which is about 40 miles west of the Sound. I'd anchored in Opsay Basin, which was near the beginning of the Grey Horse Channel. From there I had to make my way to the next channel north, which is the Cope Channel. And this involved quite a convoluted route through all the obstacles and underwater rocks and so on to get into the Cope Channel. Once I got there, the first landmark in that channel was the Cabbage Buoy, which is a very intriguing name for a buoy, and I'm sure there's some interesting history to that. Once I'd reached the Cope Passage, I picked up about 1 knot of favourable tide and made my way up towards Berensay and then round the top of Berensay, close inshore to avoid the sandbanks. And I was then on my way to St Kilda. Looking out due west from the bow of Mwera. Somewhere out there about 30 miles away is St Kilda. An archipelago of about 4 islands, I think. The main one being Hirta, which has a west-facing bay called Village Bay, where I'm hoping to anchor for the next 2 nights. Might seem a bit crazy to be taking Mwera out to St Kilda, but if Corribees have crossed the Atlantic, sailed to the Azores, up into the Arctic, all those different trips people have done, then 40 miles out to St Kilda is a small voyage. From my research online, it seems maybe a third of planned trips, sailing trips to St Kilda, actually make it, because on the day the conditions are just not suitable, too rough to go across or too much swell in Village Bay to anchor there. Maybe it gets very foggy, people lose their nerve. One way or another, maybe 2/3 of the planned trips don't make it. But I'm fortunate to have a couple of days of quite settled weather with gentle winds. It's probably a small swell about 1/2 metre, which looks like it's rolling in from the north. Maybe left over from the strong northers we've had for the last week or so. But I'm hoping that Village Bay will be smooth enough to anchor in. I think it's rather a swell magnet. Maybe the shape of it somehow focuses the swells more. It seems to be quite a big issue. So about 1/3 of the way out to St Kilda, the wind died away, and initially I was motor sailing and then eventually just motoring. Although it's disappointing not to be sailing, I just felt I was so lucky to get such calm conditions, not be turned back by fog or strong winds or rough seas. And there was a great sense of growing anticipation of seeing the first peak of Hirta Island appearing on the horizon. I had a brief visit from some dolphins as well, which is always good for the morale. So I've been on the go for about 10 hours now, and it's been very smooth. There's a big rolling swell, but really no waves to speak of. And some close-hauled motor sailing. It's been very comfortable. I anticipated motoring most of today, which make it more likely I'll be able to get here anyway, so I'll just have to take that. So after 12 hours my patience was rewarded and I began the approach into Village Bay. I met this expedition ship just leaving, which I was pleased to see, and could see one other yacht that was on anchor near the pier. As you get near the beach, the bottom turns to a nice sandy bottom with no weed or kelp or anything, so the holding's very good. Just a few minutes after I'd got the anchor down, I saw the tender from the other yacht anchored in the bay here, heading back to their boat, and once he'd dropped the crew off, the captain came over to me and invited me on board for an evening drink, which was really nice. I was obviously fairly tired after a 12-hour passage, but it's always good to go and swap some tales and hear what people have been up to. They'd sailed up to Scotland from the south coast of England somewhere and were just spending one night at St Kilda. Once he dropped me back on board, I heated up my food, which I'd prepared the night before, had my supper, and then I think I got the dinghy pumped up ready to go ashore in the morning. The next day the weather got a little bit more windy, and there was quite a lot of low cloud on and off covering the tops of the island, and it can be quite difficult to navigate your way around, but nonetheless I was very excited to be there and went ashore to start exploring. Looking down from the hillside above Village Bay, you can just see Moira there on anchor, and then in the middle of the photo you can see an arc of stone buildings, which is the street where the inhabitants of St Kilda used to live, in about 20 or so stone houses, which used to be very small black houses and then were modified and made a bit more habitable. It was an extraordinary community of people that lived here. In fact, there have been people living on St Kilda for the last 2,000 years, and the community that lived in these houses were just subsistence living. They were more cragsmen than fishermen, and they used to harvest seabirds off the cliffs on the other islands around Hirta itself and then preserve them for the winter. They also grew a few vegetables and just lived a very simple subsistence life, but from the accounts that I've read, were quite a strong, supportive community, sharing food and other things with each other for people that weren't able to work or harvest seabirds and so on. So it was very sort of moving somehow to be just aware of the history and the people that lived there in such a harsh, isolated environment for so long. These days there is a few people that live there over the summer. There's a Scottish National Trust warden and also some research people who look at the population of Soay sheep, which are a unique breed of sheep on the island there. And there are also some contractors who oversee the radar station, which was put up on just near the highest peak on the island during the First World War. It was just amazing to roam around the island in quite misty conditions and then getting a clear view all of a sudden as the cloud got swept away. I walked over to Glen Bay, which is the bay on the sort of north side of the island, which looks like it would provide good shelter from the southerly winds, but it's about 30 plus meters deep, so it's not a great place to anchor. As I walked down into the valley, I became aware of several great skuas flying around, which was not a bird that I'd seen before, and they were quite spectacular to watch. I walked right down to the foreshore onto this rocky promontory to try and get a look into the cave, and spotted these rare St Kilda penguins just roosting on the rock there. They're actually guillemots, but they do look rather like penguins in this particular pose. I also went past the leading lights, which at night time can lead you into Village Bay on a bearing of 270 degrees due west. So that was it. I'd made it to St Kilda and just had a great 2 days there exploring and chatting with the warden. I kept on bumping into him as I roamed around the island, and it was just very exhilarating. There was somewhere near the top of one of the peaks where you could get a phone signal, so I managed to just let people know I was there safely and having a good time. The wind did get up a bit during the second day, with quite a few downdrafts coming down into the bay, and it was a northerly wind, about force 5, and that's what I went out into when I was left after 2 days, heading back to the Western Isles again. So it was quite an exciting trip going back, which you'll hear more about in the next episode.